Hello friends, are you ready for a massive book haul? Because there's a lot of books in front of me and we gotta talk about them. My name is Lexi and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be sharing with you a massive stack of books that I have here in front of me. I do have a lemonade. I highly recommend if you want, like there's no pressure, okay? But I highly recommend you grab yourself something to drink because it's gonna be a long video, okay? But before we go ahead and get started, I would like to thank today's sponsor. This video is kindly being sponsored by Book of the Month. Speaking of hauling new books, let me show you a few books that I selected this month from Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a fast-growing online book subscription service. Every month, you log into your account and choose which book or books you'd like to be sent to you from their carefully curated selection. Each month, their books are handpicked by their voracious team of readers who sort through new book releases ranging from thrillers to contemporaries to romance and more. And there's absolutely no risk with Book of the Month either, as they have an excellent skip policy, and they also allow their customers to choose from their wide range of backlist titles. This month, I chose two different books. The first book is an adult thriller called None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. When a famous podcaster interviews a stranger promising to divulge the story of a lifetime, secrets emerge that threaten to expose the truth of the lives they've both worked so hard to protect. And the second book I chose is an adult literary fiction called Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is the story of one Dominican family told through the voices of its women as they await a gathering that will forever change their lives. And if you would like to try Book of the Month for yourself, you can use my code, which is Alexandra, to get your very first book box for only $9.99. I highly recommend them. I love this service. I've been using them now for years, and I absolutely could not recommend Book of the Month enough. All of the links for Book of the Month along with my code can be found down below in my description, and I highly recommend checking them out. And now let's get back to the video. So anyways, we have quite a few books. I am so excited. Let's go ahead and get started with the very first category. Let's start with the spooky, scary stuff, okay? Okay, in my opinion, you can never have too many spooky, scary books. I just scared my dog. Are you okay? I guess I really ripped that pretty aggressively. So the very first spooky, scary book that I have is a thriller, and it's a YA thriller by Kaitlyn Bryn. And honestly, I haven't read it, but I have not stopped talking about it on my channel because I am just so excited. Dare I say thrilled to read this thriller. So the book is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, again by Kaitlyn Bryn. Kaitlyn Bryn. Oh, her name rhymes. By Kaitlyn Bryn, and I'm just so excited. So this is the cover, spooky as heck, you know what I'm saying? And it's about a girl named Charity, and Charity has always wanted to be a camp counselor at this place. All of the camp counselors sort of pretend that they are a character in this epic, like scary thriller type storyline, if that makes any sense. And so she, I think, is like one of the victims that has to try to survive the killer. However, while she is at this camp, the other counselors actually do start disappearing one by one, and she begins to suspect that this isn't as much of a game as she thought, and that real scary stuff is actually happening. The next book still has the price tag on it. I actually got this thrifting. It's called Only a Monster by Vanessa Lynn. This is another YA book, and it just sounds amazing. I don't know how much of this is a thriller versus just like a spooky fun fantasy, but it sounds really great. We're following Joan, and Joan learns that her family are actually a bunch of ravenous, dangerous monsters, and that she herself is a dangerous monster. And then she falls for somebody who ends up being a monster slayer and hunter. And wow, it has everything I want. It really does. Next up, we have T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is such a whimsical, wonderful author. I needed to pick this book up. It's called A House with Good Bones, and this is, I believe, an adult horror book, so we're talking real spooky. And it says Southern hospitality is to die for, which sounds amazing. This is a new release, and this is about somebody who goes back to their childhood home, but their mom is not acting like how she normally acts, and the house has been fully painted white, and it seems like something is wrong with the house. So it sounds really interesting and dark. I'm very intrigued because I love haunted house stories, and I have a feeling that this is going to be really unique. Okay, Okay, next up I have a middle grade. I love middle grades that are a little bit spooky. They're some of my very favorite things to read in the whole wide world. And this is called What Lives in the Woods, and this is by Lindsay Curry. And this is about our main protagonist, whose name is Ginny. And Ginny is really excited about summer, but all of her summer plans are turned fully upside down when her parents take her to this old rundown Gothic mansion that they want to fix up for the summer. And while she's there, she learns about like terrible, horrible things that might be lurking in the woods and that are taking local campers one by one. And she believes that whatever is there is also possibly watching her. And it just sounds great because it sounds like we're gonna get like a haunted house story. It sounds like we might get some monsters in the woods. It sounds spooky and creepy. I'm here for the vibes. Next up, I picked up 2 translated works, and these are both translated from Japanese, and they both sound incredible. They're also both books that are part of other series, but you can read the books out of order. So the very first one is called The Mill House Murders, and this is by Yokito Ayatsuji, I think. This is The Mill House Murders, and I'm just gonna read the back. It says, ever since a horrific car accident, Fujinuma has lived a reclusive existence in the remote mill house, his scarred face hidden behind a rubber mask. Then one stormy night, the tranquility of his retreat is shattered by a gruesome murder, a baffling disappearance, and the theft of a priceless painting. The brilliant Shidima arrives on the scene, but as he investigates the seemingly impossible events of that evening, death strikes again and again. So it sounds so cozy and really, I don't know, just super, super fun. And then the next one is by Shishi Yokimizo, and it's called The Devil's Flute Murders. And again, what an incredible book cover. This just looks so fun. So it says, amid the rubble of a post-war Tokyo inside the grand Tsubaki house, a once noble family is in mourning. The old Viscount Tsubaki, a brooding, troubled composer, has been found dead. When the family gather for a divination to shed light on their patriarch's demise, death visits the house once more, and the brilliant Kendachi is called in to investigate. But before he can get to the truth, Kendachi must uncover the Tsubaki's most disturbing secrets while the gruesome murders continue. Dun dun dun! Next up is a book, and I don't know exactly how spooky scary it's gonna be, but it's by Stephen King. And so I was like, just throw it in the pile. This is a little novella by Stephen King, and it's called The Body. The Body is actually the inspiration for that one perfect, amazing movie, Stand By Me by Stephen King. And Stand By Me is about a group of friends who all one summer decide to try to find out what happened to a body. I think they just want to like discover what happened to this dead, murdered body. And it's really a story about like their friendship and about this one amazing, very nostalgic summer, but it is spooky and creepy as well. It's one of my favorite movies, and I've always wanted to read what it was based off of. So yeah, those are the vibes. Nostalgia summer, dead body. The next one is called Malice House, and this is by Megan Shepherd. This book has the potential to be a 5-star for me because it has a lot of my buzzwords that I'm always excited for and that I'm always looking for. One of them being books about illustrators and books about writers. Another being that this involves a secret society. And then the final element is that this also includes and involves monsters. Like, what more do you need in life? You know what I mean? The book is following Haven, and Haven is an illustrator. She goes to her father's old estate when he passes on, and she finds that he actually wrote this screenplay, I think, or like a manuscript of all of these different monsters. And I think it's like short stories about all of these different monsters. Haven decides, as like a way to kind of bond with him after he's passed away, to illustrate these monsters. But something more sinister is happening. There's a secret society involved, and I'm pretty sure the monsters are involved as well. And I mean, come on, don't you want to read this immediately? Because I do. Next up, we've got one of my most anticipated books of the entire year, and that's The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So this book is following a caretaker named Kit who is taking care of an older woman named Lenora. Lenora apparently was accused of murdering her family, sort of like a Lizzie Borden situation. However, no one could actually prove that she did these murders, and she has not spoken since this night. And finally, now that she's older, she decides that she wants to tell what really happened to Kit using a typewriter. It sounds great. It sounds so incredible. I'm so excited. I don't know. I think it's gonna be really, really fun. And then finally, the last spooky scary book that I have here is called Dead 11, and this is by Jimmy Giuliano. And this book just sounds like it has everything. First of all, the vibes remind me of my best friend's exorcism, and I loved that book so much, so I'm really hoping to love this one as well. Second of all, it has literally been blurbed by R.L. Stine, okay? You know if R.L. Stine says something is creepy, it's gonna be a scary good time. The book itself is following Willow, and Willow finds the words Clifford Island written by her son after her son is no longer alive. And she's never heard of Clifford Island before, so she does some digging and she finds out that it's a real place. And when she visits, everyone there is really strange because they're all acting like they are stuck in the 90s. And then one day Willow disappears. And this particular storyline is following a teenager who lives on the island who does not understand why everyone on her island are acting so weird and why they have all of these rituals. And then I think she ends up kind of tangled up in Willow's story and she tries to find out what has happened to Willow. And like, I love this for so many reasons, but one of them is that I love the 90s. Aside from the murderous island of potential people doing bad stuff, living in the 90s, I mean, that doesn't sound too bad. And those are all of the spooky, scary books that I have. So let's go ahead and move on to fantasy. Okay, so as kind of like a sub-genre of fantasy, which isn't really fantasy, but anyways, I have Greek mythology, and I only have 2 books for this category, but I decided to make it a category because I apparently really like categories. I don't know what to tell you. So I have 2 books for Greek mythology. The first one is Psyche and Eros, and this is by Luna. It has a cat hair on it, okay. It's by Luna McNamara. Psyche and Eros is one of my very favorite Greek myths, so I'm really excited to pick it up. It says, "Who said true love is a myth?" It looks so beautiful. A prophecy claims that Psyche will defeat a monster feared even by the gods, rebelling against her society's expectations for women. Psyche spends her youth mastering blade and bow, preparing to meet her destiny. When Psyche angers the love goddess, Aphrodite, she sends Eros, god of desire, to deliver a cruel curse. After eons watching humanity twist his gifts, the last thing Eros wants is to become involved in the chaos of the mortal world. But when he pricks himself with the arrow intended for Psyche, Eros finds himself doomed to yearn for a woman who will be torn from him the moment their eyes meet. I love star-crossed lovers, okay? Titanic, take all my money. Romeo and Juliet, take all of my money. Psyche and Eros, take all of my money. And then the other one I have here is Threads That Bind, and this is a YA book by Kika Hatsupalu. And this is a retelling of the Fates. So the Fates, there were 3 different people, and they sort of were like in charge of determining the fate of people. Do you remember in Hercules when like they had the thread and then they tried to cut it and that's how they would kill a person? Yeah, that's them. So anyways, this particular book is kind of a retelling of that, and it's about these sisters who apparently are destined to become the new Fates. And we're following, I think, the youngest named Io, who is a private investigator, and her latest job leads her to a horrific discovery. Somebody is abducting women, maiming their life threads, and setting the resulting wraiths loose in the city to kill. So I think it's a little bit of like a murder mystery, but make it fantasy and Greek mythology, and it sounds really incredible. I'm also buddy reading this with one of my friends, Soleil, and I'm very excited to read this and discuss this with her. All right, and that's it for Greek mythology. So now let's get on to the fantasy. Do you remember when I told you that I would like die for star-crossed lovers, and then I mentioned Romeo and Juliet? Well, enter Olivia Blake's newest book. So this book is called One for My Enemy. It is adult. It's Olivia Blake's book, and this technically is a reprint of her book. Most of her books were self-published, and then they were acquired by Tor Publishing. So if you maybe read this book years ago and the cover looked different, or you've heard of this book, the reason it's like new this year is because Tor has kind of like redone the cover. So it's kind of repackaged, but I'm pretty sure it's about the same book. So this book has a lot going on, okay? We've got Romeo and Juliet vibes, but like instead of just regular families, the families are witch families. And so we've got a little bit of like a witch magic war going on, but then also it's in New York in modern times. I will say that I have been reading this and I feel like Olivia Blake just really nails relationships. I feel like she's really great at pining, you know what I mean? But I feel like parts of the book are just a little bit more slower paced than I was expecting. So I still have really high hopes for this book, but I'm about halfway through and it is going a little bit more slow than I thought. Next up, let's talk about TJ Klune's latest, In the Lives of Puppets. And this is his newest release. I think this came out in April. This is adult and it's also LGBTQ+. So I read it for Patreon. I thought that it was really interesting and it had a lot of really sincere and beautiful moments. But again, like the plot maybe was a little bit more slow than The House in the Cerulean Sea, just for me. me. However, I feel like it did a great job really at portraying such a beautiful relationship between, I guess, like Pinocchio's dad and Pinocchio. His name is Vic in this particular book. The next book that I picked up because of one of my friends here on YouTube, Liv from Olivia Reads a Latte. She really, really loved this book, and it's called The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. This book is following two women in Victorian London times, and one, I think, does seances, and the other is trying to solve a murder. And they team up together, and spooky stuff happens. And honestly, like, doesn't it sound great? First of all, Victorian London, what a vibe, but also seances and ghosts and like some random murder mystery. It's everything. It's perfect. I haven't even read it. 5 stars. The next book is called The Wishing Game, and this is by Meg Schaefer. I have heard incredible things about this. I am so excited to read this book. I think it's going to be amazing. And it's a fantasy about a children's author who I guess became kind of reclusive after his last book. He ends up coming out of like hiding and says that he would like to hold a contest and grant a wish to whoever wins, along I think with like his next book or something. He announces that he's writing a new book and he's holding a contest. Oh my gosh, it gets even better. It says on Clock Island. I don't know why, but like I love things that have to do with clocks and time, and magic is involved. Amazing. Next up I have some Brandon Sanderson, and I ended up buying the new floppy versions of the Mistborn series. So I've actually read the very first book in the series, but I have not read the second two, and I have the really, really pretty white editions. Like they're smaller, they're the UK covers, and they're all white with like some blue on them. But I saw these in Barnes & Noble, and you guys, I'm gonna be transparent, okay? I literally bought these for the dopamine that I get from hearing those floppy pages. A floppy book just makes me happy. It really does. This particular series is sort of following the premise of what if the chosen one, or what if the hero lost to the bad guy? And we're kind of following that world where the good guys didn't win. And now everyone who's left just kind of has to deal with it. It's also a heist novel, so it's a book about a group of misfits that get together to try to pull one over on the Dark Lord. And it's great. Like it's exciting, it's thrilling, it's funny. There's a little tiny touch of romance in here. My experience reading the first one was really, really great. I read it a couple of years ago, and I'd actually really love to revisit this world and then also read the other 2 books in the series. So yeah. That's Mistborn. And then the last Brandon Sanderson that I have here is Tress of the Emerald Sea. And this is, again, by Brandon Sanderson. This is actually my Patreon book club pick. And I'm so excited. This is the book club pick for July. And actually, Brandon Sanderson said that he was really inspired by The Princess Bride in this one. So this is a lot more of like a light-hearted fantasy, maybe a little bit more of a comedy. I've heard great things about this, and I think it's gonna be a 5-star. I really do. The only life Tress has known on her island in an Emerald Sea ocean has been a simple one, with simple pleasures of collecting cups and listening to stories by her friend Charlie. But when her father takes them on a voyage to find a bride and disaster strikes, Tress must stow away on the ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly midnight sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can Tress leave her simple life and make her own place, sailing a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death. I think I'm gonna love this one, I really do. And then finally, the very last fantasy that I have here is Ink Blood Sister Scribe, and this is by Emma Torres. And this has so much in it that I really, really love. We've got like a magical family, we've got a magical library, we've got family secrets, we've got destiny, we've got a lot, okay? I'm really excited. I'm gonna be honest, the thing that really put this book over the top was when I saw that there was a secret magical library. Sign me up. It says, for generations, the Collodi family has guarded a collection of ancient and rare books. Books that let a person walk through walls or manipulate the elements. Books of magic that half-sisters Joanna and Esther have been raised to revere and protect. But all magic comes with a price, and for years the sisters have been separated. But after their father dies suddenly while reading a book Joanna has never seen before, the sisters must reunite to preserve their family legacy. In the process, they'll uncover a world of magic far bigger and more dangerous than they ever imagined, and all the secrets their parents kept hidden. Secrets that span centuries, continents, and even other libraries. Yes. And those are all of the fantasy books. So let's go ahead and move on to a really short stack of short story collections, and then we'll move on to the rest of the books, which are like contemporary, romance, and literary fiction. Okay, so this stack is relatively short. Actually, I only have 4 books total. The first one is by Raymond Carver and it's called What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. I will be fully transparent. I actually purchased this book because of a movie that I saw. One of my lovely subscribers actually commented and they recommended that I check out this book because it's a book all about writers. And I ended up watching it and fully falling in love with it, and I've now seen it 5 times. The main guy in there, like the dad, he references this book and he talks about how wonderful it is. And there's quite a few quotes that he mentions in this speech that come from Raymond Carver. And I don't know, I was really intrigued. I really wanted to pick it up. I think that this is just a book of like contemporary stories. Now, I recognize Raymond Carver because I have read quite a few of his short stories in college. So I'm wondering actually if I will recognize any of these. I feel like a lot of English majors probably read from Raymond Carver. But anyways, the 1 or 2 that I have read, I really enjoyed. And I don't know, I'm just really excited to read this and report back. Next up is a literary magazine. And normally I pick up a literary magazine called the Paris Review or Tin House, but my local bookstore was actually out of those. And so I ended up choosing one called Fantasy and Science Fiction. I've always wanted to read this. This again is a book though that I picked up because of that movie. The son, I can't believe I don't remember any of these people's names. Anyways, the son of that movie, like the big thing that he talks about is how he got a spot in fantasy and science fiction, and it's a really big deal. Getting published in one of these magazines is really hard. It just reminded me of how much I've always wanted to read this magazine, and so I decided to go out and also purchase this magazine as well because of the movie, but also because I've always wanted to read it. So this is just a collection of short stories that either are fantasy based in genre or science fiction based, and they're from submissions of writers and poets, and so that's what this is about, and I'm very excited to read it. The next one is a short story collection, and I don't really know a lot about it, but I've heard excellent things about the author. So the author is Eve Babbitt, and it's called Black Swans, and so many people have said that this is incredible. I'll go ahead and read the back. It says, a new reissue of Babbitt's collection of 9 stories that look back on the 80s and 90s, decades of dreams, drink, and glimpses of a changing world. Black Swans further celebrates the phenomenon of Eve Babbitt, cementing her reputation as the voice of a generation. I'm really excited. I really want to get more into Eve Babbitt in general. Like, I've heard great things about her writing. Can't wait. And then the last one is one that I really don't know a lot about, but it's called White Cat, Black Dog by Kelly Link. So it says 7 modern fairy tales from Pulitzer Prize finalist Kelly Link, featuring illustrations by award-winning artist Sean Tan. Sounds really great. I'm really excited to read this. I've heard excellent things about Kelly Link. And that's it as far as the short story collections are concerned. So let's go ahead and dive right into my general fiction section. Okay, let's go ahead and start out the contemporary stack with this lovely stack. These are all the books that I purchased while I was in New York City. I went with a few of my friends actually, and we met up. We went book shopping in New York City. We spent basically about a week together, and it was the highlight of the year. And these are the books that I purchased while I was in New York City. The very first one I think would be perfect to read this summer, so I'm really hoping to get to it. And it's called The Vacationers by Emma Straub. And I purchased this because I actually went to the author's bookstore that she literally owns. And the bookstore is called Books Are Magic. It was wonderful. It was so beautiful, and I really loved my experience shopping in there. For the Posts, a 2-week trip to an island with their extended family and friends is a celebration. The sunlit island, its mountains and beaches, its tapas and tennis courts also promise an escape from tension simmering at home in Manhattan, but all does not go according to plan. Over the course of the vacation, secrets come to light, old and new humiliations are experienced, childhood rivalries resurface, and ancient wounds are exasperated. The next one is a book that I didn't think was a horror book, but now maybe I'm thinking is a little spooky, scary. I don't know, actually, so let me know down below. But it's called Chlorine, and it is by Jade Song. I want to say that this is a book about a person who slowly starts to become a mermaid, or she thinks that she's gonna become a mermaid. I think that this has some potential like surrealist or magical realism elements in it. I've heard it's good, but I've heard it's hard to get through. I've heard maybe there are some like topics to look up if you are triggered by certain things. And I've also kind of heard that this is scary. So I don't fully know what to expect from this book, but it sounds really cool. I love books about mermaids. And also I loved the bookstore that I got this from. I got this this from the Strand, and the Strand is massive in New York, and it was really, really fun to browse around with my friends. The next one is another one that I purchased from Books Are Magic in Brooklyn. I thought this would be the perfect book to buy in Brooklyn, and that is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This has become like a modern day classic, I believe. Again, this is one of those books where everyone says it's brilliant and wonderful, but I don't personally know a lot about it. The back says, the beloved American classic about a young girl's coming of age at the turn of the 20th century. I think also there was a really popular movie based on this, and I really, really want to watch it as well, but I don't know a lot going into this book. And then the last one is one that seems kind of vague, but also really intriguing. It's called The Guest Lecture, and this is by Martin Riker. And again, I think all of these so far have been adult, so this is also an adult read. And I'm going to read the flap for this because there's a lot going on. So it says, in a hotel room in the middle of the night, Abby, a young feminist economist, lies awake next to her sleeping husband and daughter. Anxious that she is slowly underprepared for a talk she is presenting tomorrow, she has resolved to practice by using an ancient and rhetorical method to assign parts of her speech to different rooms in her house. Yet as she wanders with increasing alarm through the rooms of her own consciousness, Abby finds herself straying from her prepared remarks on economic history. Confronting her own future at a time of global darkness, Abby undertakes a quest through her memories to ideas hidden in the corners of her mind. It sounds so unique, and I'm very excited to dive into it. The next book is another Eve Babbitt's book. It's called Sex and Rage by Eve Babbitt, and I love whoever is designing or redesigning the reprints of these books. I just feel like this and then Black Swans looks so cool. So it says here on the back, the popular resurgence of Eve Babbitt's continues with this very special reissue of her novel, originally published in 1979, about a dreamy young girl moving between Los Angeles and New York City. Sex and Rage delights in its sensuous, dreamlike narrative and its spontaneous embrace of fate and work. The next one is a romance book that so many people have been talking about, and I will be honest, the reason I have not picked it up is because so many people have also said that this book is sad. I don't know if I want to be sad right now, but it's called Happy Place by Emily Henry. I love Emily Henry. I have so much faith in this author. She's, I think, one of my favorite romance authors of all time. The book is following Harriet and Wynne, who are a couple who are not together anymore. So they've fully broken up, but they're pretending to be together when they get together with their friends at the lake house for summer, and they're kind of pretending that they're still together for the sake of the group, for the sake of the vacation, right? And so they end up fake dating even though they've broken up. So it's a little bit of like a second chance romance, and it's also a little bit of like the fake dating and close proximity tropes. I don't know if it's going to be mostly sad or mostly happy, but I have heard amazing things about this book, and I obviously love the author, so we'll see. This next book I picked up on a whim. I haven't really heard anything about it, so I'm hoping it's good. It's called Nothing Special by Nicole Flattery, and it's a book that takes place, I think, in the 1960s in New York City, and we're following a girl who is the typist for Andy Warhol. And it's a little bit of a coming of age story about this girl trying to find her place in the world in New York City in the 1960s, and also amongst art and artists. It sounds fantastic. I love a book with like the theme of finding yourself, but also I love books that deal with art and talk about art and culture. I don't know, I think it's gonna be great. I have really, really high expectations for it. I love the setting, I love the cover. We'll see. Oh my gosh, next up, this book sounds so cute, okay? It's about an octopus. I really didn't know a lot about this book, but I had so many of my Patreons recommending this book to me that I had to go out and pick it up. And then I ended up actually asking Instagram, and I had so many of you guys recommending this book to me on Instagram. And so I was like, right, okay, this book has to be like a main priority. So I picked it up. It's called Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Beautiful cover, and I love the concept so much. The book is following a woman who ends up taking a job at an aquarium. She ends up striking up this friendship with an octopus. Apparently her son died, and she can't really figure out what happened. I don't remember if it's like a murder mystery case or if it's just what happened, like why did we never find out how he died. And the octopus apparently somehow decides decides to help and crack the case. And I don't really know what that means. I don't know if the octopus can like speak. I don't know like how in depth the octopus is helping crack the case. I really don't know, but it sounds really precious and I've heard excellent, amazing things. Okay, the next book I am going to just say right now, I don't remember if I've hauled in my last haul, so if I have, I apologize. But I picked up The Swifts, A Dictionary of Scoundrels by Beth Lincoln. And I read this and it's 5 stars. I love it so much. The book itself is following Shenanigan. Shenanigan lives in a really, really unique family, and her whole family, they name themselves based on random words in the dictionary, which I think is so cool. She ends up with her family at this big family reunion. One of the family members is pushed down the stairs and is declared dead. And Shenanigan wants to try to figure out who killed this person and why. And there's kind of like a big treasure / inheritance involved. What I loved the most about this was the overall message, the themes. I just thought this was great. I think this would be a great pick for adults who love middle grade, and I also think it would be a great pick for kids who are at this reading level. I really highly recommend it. Okay, next up, this is a book that really should have been in the spooky scary section. I just totally forgot. And it's called Carmilla. Now I have a version of Carmilla, but I wanted this version specifically because this version is cool, okay? Not only does the cover look amazing, but also it has an introduction by Carmen Maria Machado. I really, really loved Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House, which was sort of like a memoir about a relationship that the author had and how toxic it was, but it was done in this very, very beautiful and poetic way. Carmilla is Dracula, but sapphic. And then the next one I got is The Bandit Queens. I was gonna wait actually until this was in paperback, but I folded, okay? I caved because everyone is talking about this book and how great it is, and I really, really wanna read it. This is by Perini Schroth. It's about a woman, I think, whose husband leaves her, but she kind of gives the impression that him, you know what I mean? Like you know what I'm saying? Okay, great. That's the impression. And a lot of the women in her community are like, hey, listen, my husband sucks. Like he's abusive or he's mean or he's doing all these things. How can I off my husband? And now our main protagonist, whose name is Gita, is in this really, really weird predicament because she didn't actually kill her husband, but like people are leaving her alone and being nicer to her because they're scared of her. So she needs to keep up this pretense, but she doesn't know how to advise all of these women because she didn't actually do anything. And it just sounds really great. I've heard it's hilarious. I've heard it's incredible. I have such high expectations for this book. I think it's gonna be great. I can't wait to read it. And then, okay, besties, I'm gonna be really transparent with you. The last stack of books that I have here, I don't really know anything about, but I'm gonna try my best to muddle through the synopsis. I bought them for specific vlogs that I'm hoping to do this year, and I just bought them after doing some research, but I have not read these. So if you've read these and you're like, wow, that synopsis is wrong, I just want to apologize right now because I truly don't know what these are about. Okay, let's start with the first one. We've got 100 Poems, and this is by Seamus Heaney. I don't think I'm saying I'm not pronouncing that right. It's not, is it Seamus? I feel like it's Seamus. I feel like that sounds better. Beautiful cover. And yeah, this is just a collection of poetry. I have not read this. I don't know what types of poems are in here, but I'm excited to read it. Then we have To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is a classic, and a lot of people actually read this usually in high school, but I've never read this. Like, this wasn't required reading at my high school. So apparently this is told from the perspective of a lawyer who is defending a Black man who has been charged with some stuff that I can't say or I'll get demonetized. So it says Harper Lee explores with humor the irrationality of adult attitudes to race and class in the Deep South of the 1930s. I'm excited to read it because so many people have said that it's incredibly moving and touching and really important. So can't wait. The next book that I have here is called Animals by Emma Jane Unsworth, I think. And I don't know a lot, but I did read the synopsis, and from what I can, I guess, gather from the synopsis, this is following two best friends who have really, really relied on each other when they were growing up, but now they're entering their 30s, and I think our main protagonist, Laura, is really being pulled in two different directions. She's being pulled in one direction from, I think, maybe like the person that she's in a relationship with who wants her to grow up a little bit more, and then also her old bestie who wants her to stay kind of in like a party scene. I don't really know exactly what to expect from this, but I am very intrigued. Then we have Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. I think this is a play. Waiting for Godot has become one of the most important and enigmatic plays of the past 50 years. The story revolves around two seemingly homeless men waiting for someone or something named Godot. I don't really know a lot going into it, but I actually really enjoy reading plays and I would love to read more. So I think this will be really, really fun to read. Next up, I have another one that I think is kind of considered like a classic, but I have not read. It's called The Catcher in the Rye and it is by D.J. Salinger. The novel details 2 days in the life of 16-year-old Holden after he has been expelled from prep school. Exciting. And then the very last one that I have here is a collection, I think of like 3 different books in one, and it's The Famous Five. And this is like a middle grade series, I think, about a group of friends who have little adventures in the summertime together. And yeah, I'm excited. And I think you guys, that's it. Those are all of the books that I have recently purchased. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching me talk about books. I love a good book haul. I love a fresh stack of books. Just everything about it makes me happy. If you've made it to this part of the video, I would love for you to leave me, oh my gosh, the ice cream emoji. We have to talk about ice cream. And in fact, I would love to know from you down below in the comments, what's your favorite flavor ice cream? Tell me, I need to know. What's mine? I don't know. I feel like mine depends on my mood. I really like strawberry ice cream and s'mores and cookies and cream. And also a huge thank you to all of my Patreons over at Fox and Wood. If you're looking for more content and more ways to support me, you can join my Patreon. All of the links for them will be down below in my description box. And a huge, huge thank you specifically to all of my Ink and Quill Club members, who are all the executive producers of every single video that I create. I think you guys, that's it. So until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will chat with you very soon. Bye.
Always think of you when spring comes, like it's something in the air at that time. Don't know why. Always dream of you when spring comes. It's like the heat